All right, Erica, thanks. Iran is in its 8th week of unrest following the death sentence of 22-year-old Mahsa Amini. This is that country's revolutionary court's first known death sentence. Joining me to talk about what all of this means is the director of the Center for Middle East Studies at the University of Denver, Nader Hashemi. Good to see you.
Thanks for the invite.
Thanks for coming in. So this happened 8 weeks ago, and you had to refresh my memory on what it is. It turns out it's such a big deal. So explain who Mahsa Amini was and what's going on there.
She was a 22-year-old woman from Kurdish background. She was in Tehran visiting family, and she was arrested by Iran's notorious morality police for allegedly improperly wearing the veil. She was brutalized in detention, and she died. And it was her death at the hands of Iran security forces that triggered this protest movement, which is really now an incipient revolution. So that's the background.
And they always try to crush the revolutions. I mean, the protests there, I guess. But they haven't been able to this time. Why is that?
Well, I think the protests are very deep-rooted in Iranian society. They bring together different segments of Iranian society in ways that we really haven't seen in recent years. Ethnic groups, students, lawyers, doctors, merchants, factory workers. So the protests are just so wide and deeply rooted within Iranian society, and particularly within Iran's young population. The vast majority of Iranians are under the age of 30. They clearly want a different future. So it's very difficult for the regime to suppress these protests because they're so popular.
Yeah, I know it's always hard to predict the future, but what is the big picture for all of this in your mind?
The big picture is, can these protests be sustained? Can these different segments of the Iranian society coalesce and have unified strikes, a unified sort of set of demands that can then put pressure on the regime? Now, of course, the other side of the story is the regime is notorious for repression. And so as we go forward in these protests, they're issuing death sentences against protesters. Clearly, they're gearing up for, a massive crackdown. And as we know, these authoritarian regimes in the Middle East, don't recognize any moral limits when it comes to regime suppression. So the big fear going forward is we could be seeing a bloodbath if these things continue.
Yeah, the protests have spread around the world now. We've seen protests in Denver, out at the state capitol, and I always wonder, these protests that are not in Iran, that are around the world, do they have an effect?
I think they do, because they give people on the streets in Iran who are putting their lives on the line a great source of moral support that the world hasn't forgotten them. So it's not just the protests, but I'd also highlight the fact that prominent global celebrities, Oprah Winfrey, Michelle Obama, U2, the rock group U2, Coldplay, even Kim Kardashian, whatever you think about her, she has used her Twitter influence to shine a spotlight on Iran's human rights record. So protests, people speaking out in solidarity, give people on the street in Iran a sense that, look, you're not alone, the world is with you. So these things, I think, really do matter. And you just have to ask the people on the ground in Iran what they think about this global solidarity, and they say we want more of it.
All right. Well, thank you for bringing us up to date on all of that. We appreciate it. We might have you in again to talk about this as it gets down the road.
Thanks much.
All right.